All right, fishing folks. So today we're talking about the top five Z-Man baits. And to do so, I had to get an expert on. So I got my boy Miles Burghoff on. He's going to talk about all things Z-Man, his top five baits. Because, of course, he's an expert. So Miles, how's it going?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me on here. And again, sorry I've been so unresponsive. It's been a crazy year, obviously.
I get it. I get it. Now, before we even get into the Z-Man baits, you didn't
hmm
fish on any circuit this year because you had a lot of family things going on, of course. I think a
Yeah,
lot of people know about what was going on with your daughter and everything. And I'm so happy she's doing better and doing well.
me
Um,
too.
but people want to know what's your plans for next year?
So I was actually just writing a Bass Fan article about this. So really, it's been kind of a weird experience, because all I've ever worked for is to be a tournament angler, a professional angler. And then this year kind of shook everything up to where there was times where I didn't know what the future really held for us, and the desire to be home with my family more was kind of a big thing that came up, on a pretty regular basis. But really, now that we're back home and we're kind of getting back to normal life, the goal, the goals that I have still have to, serve my family best, but um, my career's still too young to like pump the brakes on tournament fishing and just the fishing, industry in general. I think I'm going to be in the fishing industry for my entire life, uh, as long as it'll have me. And so really not a whole lot of changes. I may have a new role coming up with the company. I'm not sure if it's time to announce it yet or not, but keeping all the same sponsors, going to be fishing the Bassmaster EQs again next year, and so we're going at it. We've got a renewed sense of perspective, and I'm really excited to just get back to normal, and also get back to creating good content on like YouTube and stuff. That's really what the future holds. So not a whole lot of big changes, just kind of uh you know uh a little bit different perspective. So I think that perspective will serve me well and serve my family well moving forward, in the sport.
Good deal. Well, we miss you out there. I miss
God,
seeing you
dude,
out
I
there
miss
catching
it.
some fish.
I miss it too, man.
Good deal. So let's get into it. Let's talk about your top
Yep,
five Z-Man baits. Start at number five, work your way up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of critique your list a little bit at the very end. I got my
you
list of
got it.
top five right here. So we'll see where we stand if we have the same mindset when it comes to Z-Man baits.
So this is an impossible task because really my favorite list of Z-Man baits, except for like the top two, which I don't know if they're going to be presented in order here. I'm just going to go after it as we go. But there's two baits that really are go-tos year round for me. And then the other ones really, everything that I have on my bait wall changes from, time to time, from season to season. So I picked five baits that I think are a pretty good representation of like baits that I use on a regular basis, and or they're just a favorite for a specific reason. So with that in mind, the first one is kind of more of a specific reason, kind of a selfish, self-serving reason, because I helped design this bait, but I really do love it, and I designed it for one of my favorite scenarios in bass fishing, which is fishing shallow grass flats, like big expanses of grass, like we have down in Florida, right? And that bait is the turbo fatties. So the turbo fatties is essentially a swimming worm that we designed, like 3 or 4 years ago. It's got this really unique. This one's not a great example because it wasn't sitting good in the package. So let me grab another one. That's pretty rare because they have this nice clamshell, so most of the time they stay pretty good. But so right here you can see you've got this nice paddle tail. This is actually a similar style tail to what's on the goat. And with the Laztec, we found that this style paddle tail, it's not quite like your traditional paddle tail, but it works really well. It will spit and sputter on the surface, create a bubble trail, and also if you're slow rolling it below the surface, it has a nice swimming action. So This is one of my favorite baits for, fishing shallow grass, or even just slow rolling through, deeper grass too. It can be very good. And also as a trailer on the back of a swim jig. So the Turbo Fatties is like one of my top favorites. The next one has got to be the Diesel Minnows. Now, this one by itself isn't something that I use just by itself completely. But as a trailer on like swim jigs, spinner baits, or chatter baits, the Diesel Minnows is just one that I'm using constantly. Like I've got there's certain colors like this pearl blue glimmer that I've got so many on a peg because I need them. I go through them all year long, and especially since they go on the back of a chatterbait, this is a really big one. But they do come in like a 5-inch size too, which I use as a really good search bait, swim bait. Which a lot of swim baits are more for getting quality, not quantity. But the 5-inch Diesel Minnows, you catch a ton of fish on it. It's almost like throwing like a swim jig, but without the jig profile. So that one's a really good one for a lot of different reasons. The next one that we got to talk about is a brand new one, and the reason I added it to this top 5 list is because I thought that Z-Man just did such an incredible job designing this thing. And it's really pertinent to, and it's really relevant to the times right now with live sonar and Lowrance active target and things like that. And that is the graph shads. Z-Man introduced the graph shads at ICAST this year, and I was really excited about it because I had been kind of pushing them a little bit, sending some emails to Jose over there, who's really designing some really cool stuff nowadays, and trying to get them to design a jig head minnow setup that actually looked like a realistic shad profile, where you don't have that kind of awkward transition from a traditional jig head, which may be a completely different color or profile, to whatever jig or whatever soft plastic minnow bait you're using. And so this is kind of what they designed, which is kind of like a line through system where you come in through the top. And the cool thing about this bait is that one of the issues with traditional jig head and minnow setups is that if you're not, for some reason, is like moved over to the side or it's in a weird location, it may not track correctly. But with this bait, having the line go through the head and then tie to the bottom, there's a line tied on the bottom, that really allows you to have the knot in a position that is advantageous for this technique every single time. And they also included an air chamber in here. So the thing about live sonar is that things that are harder or more dense than water and less dense than water will show up on forward-facing sonar. And so they combine both. Obviously, the head design and the angles that they put in there and just the shape of it shows up really good, but also that air pocket that they've included in the Elastec really allows you to see your bait better on forward-facing sonar. So really, really cool bait that again, very relevant to the times right now. Everybody's winning tournaments off of baits like that, and I think that one's going to be a really big deal. The next bait, if you followed me for any amount of time, this should not come as a surprise to you, because I've made a lot of money off of this bait. This right here is the palmetto bugs. This is like one of the OGs on the Z-Man lineup. There's not a ton of baits that have been around as long in the Elastec lineup as the palmetto bugs, but I'm glad it's still around and they haven't discontinued it, because it's a fish catching machine. It's actually not. When I first started fishing with it, I'd fished beaver style baits for a long time. Flipping and pitching is my deal, especially coming from a Florida pedigree. And honestly, I did not like the design of the palmetto bugs when I first saw it. I thought it was just kind of. I thought that it to me, it wasn't as streamlined as I like a beaver style bait to be. I didn't feel like it was going to glide as well. I just didn't care for the overall design. But I learned very quickly it's just a fish catching machine. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't know if it's the buoyancy where it sits off the bottom and it has that like defensive position all the time, or something else. Maybe the profile just kind of appeals to fish more than I ever thought that it would. But the palmetto bugs is like, if I don't know what to flip and pitch, I'm gonna throw a palmetto bugs, and it catches the snot out of them. I absolutely love this bait. You can punch with it too, but it's really good for just light to moderate cover flipping and pitching. Doesn't matter if it's hard cover like docks or laydowns or grass. It's phenomenal. And then the final bait that again shouldn't come to anybody's surprise or to surprise by anybody is a chatterbait. Now I've got a jackhammer here, but I have to also include the new Chatterbait Elite Evo and the Tungsten Evo. These three chatterbaits are top of my list of things, baits that I like to throw. Chatterbait, I mean, I would say in the opens last year, I cashed 5 checks. Didn't do well in points. I didn't have a good year, but I still cashed 5 checks. And I'd say at least 4 of them were on a chatterbait or, in part on a chatterbait. And so that's definitely got to be kind of the top of the list, I would say, because it's one of the most versatile baits on the market. You can fish it deep. You can fish it shallow. You can skip it underneath docks and things. You can fish it through grass. There's so much you can do with the chatterbait, and it generates size and quantity too. So for those reasons, this thing rocks.
All right, so
That's my
I
list.
like the list. I like the list. It's a good list. So I'm with you with the turbo fatties. That's no, of course, living in Florida. I love it.
Yeah.
That's one of my go-tos. Can't beat that at all. I started to put the diesel minnow on my list, but I was like, there's so much to choose from. This was a hard list to actually put together,
Right.
especially with Z-Man, because I've been fishing Z-Man. I started off saltwater fishing, watching C.A. Richardson on Flats Class, killing them with the redfish and the snook and trout on Z-Man baits. And I had to put a chatterbait on there. I thought about the palmetto bug too, but I was like, that one. There's so many new products out there as well. So I'm with the turbo fatties. That's on my list. I did put a chatterbait on there, but I put the Mini Max on there only because of the really size and versatility. I could fish that year round in ponds, lakes for big fish, small fish. So I had to choose one chatterbait. That's when I would choose to go on the list. I also have the GOAT, the Z-Man GOAT. Now, to me, that's the most
really good one. That was one that was on my short list too.
That is, to me, it's like one of the most versatile baits out there because I can use it as a top water. I could flip with it. The good trailer. I can do so much with it. So if I have one lure to go out, you can only take one lure, it'll be the GOAT.
That one, I would have to agree with you more than, then, maybe I could replace the diesel minnows as far as that goes. But the GOAT is such a good versatile bait, like you say, and that's what it was designed to do, is just be a extremely versatile little soft plastic.
Yeah. So then I have one that people still don't talk about. Last time I had you on the show, we talked about the Hellraiser. It's not something I pick up all the time, but it's just so much fun to use. And I like to let it sink and pop it back up. Like let it sink,
really?
6 inches. I do, and just jerk it right back up and continue to retrieve, and it works for me. So, but I love it. It's just fun to use that one.
I think the Hellraiser is a great bait that just hasn't. It's either not found its niche yet, or people are not talking about it because they don't want to, they don't want a lot of people to be throwing it. But it generates a lot of bites, and it's so unique that I think that we're still haven't even cracked the code on like where it sits in your arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. And then my number 5 is the Gremlin. So I've been doing a lot of Carolina rigging with my kids lately. In the backyard pond, and that bait is a really good lure for a Carolina rig. I love it. It's subtle, doesn't give you too much action, but it gives you just enough, and I could dead stick it, and the fish go crazy over it. So that's my top 5.
It's great. That's a great top five. I mean, that would be close to what, I mean, there's so many, like there was like the mag fatties was one that I was really, thinking I needed to add on here. The TRD, the finesse TRD was one.
Right.
And then they have the new TRD fatties that I was like, man, I got to add that, but I haven't even fished that one yet, but I know it's going to produce. The Mulletron LT is another one that I was considering, but the
Me too.
Gremlins is a good one because as a bait that's designed for flipping and pitching, it's actually more than that. You say Carolina rig, totally agree on that, but also punching mats, it's really good. You can customize it by just cutting off it's set up and designed so you can cut off those little curl tails and you still have those like punch and craws that fold in so that it's a real compact package. So like it's my preferred punching bait nowadays because it's got plenty of Elastec bolt to be able to keep the hook, but it's just the right size to be able to slither through some of the thick stuff. So that one's a really good one.
Yep. So that's your top five. You got the turbo fatties, the diesel minnow, the graph shad, which I haven't used yet. I can't wait till I can get a hold of some of those. I haven't used those at all yet. Then you have the palmetto bugs and the chatterbait, the OG. When you think about Z-Man, you think about chatterbait. So that has to be on the list.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to stop this yet. We're going to continue on for another episode. I want you to take one of those baits and we're going to dive deep into how you use it, the rods, the reels, the techniques, the time of the year, and then talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
All right. Well, I appreciate you for your list, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fun.
Yeah, definitely.